What is going on, guys? This is the Poke Tea Time podcast where we serve you up a cup of the hottest takes on what's going on in the Pokemon community. I'm NotShivam, and this is Hadoukenido. We are honored to have a really special guest this evening. Probably the most, actually, I want to say the most trusted middleman in Pokemon himself. The guy who's behind the scenes, the guy who is very quiet within the community, but moves in silence, but it works to his benefit. This is a guy that deserves way more attention than he currently has. So if you haven't followed him on Instagram, make sure you do so. Before we get right into it, I hope you guys are having a good evening. It's Tuesday, and make sure you go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe. Keep commenting if you have any particular questions and it catches my eye. Definitely chat away. I will be happy to ask those questions. And for those of you guys who are listening through Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. It helps us. It really does help us. So how's your morning going? I would say evening, but you're in Japan. How's your morning going so far?
Yeah. Well, thank you first for having me.
Absolutely.
It's actually 10 a.m. right now in Japan, and I usually work, with the time in the other side of the world because most of the people I work with are actually based in the U.S. or you know in the Western world. So I
Right.
stay up late at night, and I usually wake up like no earlier than 11:30, something like that. So yeah, I'm actually waking up quite early today.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to do this. Are you full-time Pokemon?
No,
Is this what you
it's
do
my
as your
pleasure.
profession?
Not Pokemon, and so basically what happened is that I set up a company in Japan last October to do all my pop culture related endeavors with uh, officially, basically. So whether it's Pokemon cards, video games, which is my main specialty actually, graded and sealed video games, or art and the representation of Japanese artists mainly to do either commissions or appearances in conventions around the world. Yeah, basically all of these things. And there's a plan for one more thing that I think I haven't spoken of publicly before. So yeah, this is actually the first time I'm gonna mention this.
Cool. We get the
One
alpha
of the
right here, guys.
things, yeah, one of the things the company will be doing is authentication of uh, um, Japanese artwork and autographs, basically.
Wow,
So
that's huge.
whatever it is, Pokemon or outside of Pokemon, we're not going to be like grading the items, but we will be providing certificates of authenticity saying that, in our opinion, this item is authentic. And this is made possible by uh, thankfully, the big network that I come to have in the past few years in Japan. So if if I'm not sure about something, I can just reach out directly to most of the time to the artist. And sometimes, if I don't have a connection with that artist, I would have a connection with someone who knows the artist, and we can get a straight up answer if this was signed by him or sketched by him, and of course that's not limited to Pokemon. It's like
Right.
Japanese pop culture art in general, and I think there's a gap in the market in this regards because there are a ton of uh, fake and forged items on
Absolutely.
eBay, on Mercari, on Yahoo auctions. Yeah, I mean, pretty much everywhere. I don't know. I wouldn't trust uh, in anything that's basically on eBay. I mean, the only website I would just buy from with, I would say, mostly with confidence would be um, Mandarake. That's it.
I personally have never heard of that. So, um, yeah, I think
It's
that's
so it's basically a website that sells collectibles.
mhm.
You can think of it as a website, similar to Heritage, I would say,
Okay.
in Japan. But the only difference is that you cannot consign stuff to them.
I
If
see.
they like your item, they would buy it from you, and then they would auction it for themselves for their own
Uh,
benefit.
okay.
So it's yeah, it's difficult to um, make money out of it. But
No,
yeah,
I
that's
believe
that's
it.
a whole separate issue. Yeah, but I mean, they do a good work at authenticating. They provide their own certificates. They have an amazing network as well. So that's the only you know available source right now.
Absolutely. But
So
before
I
I
think
dive
there's
deep into,
definitely a gap in the market.
for sure. Before I dive deep into that, I think a lot of people here would like to know who you are. How did you come into Pokemon? Where does a lot of that passion come from? Because the biggest thing about myself, particularly about being involved, is just being passionate. Waking up every single day and doing this, doing connecting with people, collecting. There's a huge love and immense passion for not just Pokemon, but for this overall appreciation for all sorts of collectibles. So, my first experience with you was I think last year, where I was in the process of buying a vintage Digimon game, and I was like, I don't really know too much about authenticating vintage PlayStation games. Like I know a few stuff when it comes to Game Boy games and Game Boys in general, but I know that there's a lot of fakes out there. So you went out of your way to kind of help me out. You didn't have to, but I immensely appreciate that. And so I think that's kind of where this relationship kind of started, just me simply reaching out and asking for your help, which, again, thank you for that. And it still sits there on my shelf as a collectible. But I kind of want to know how did you come into this space? Where did that love first come from? And how long have you been in this hobby?
All right. Well, first of all, you're most welcome. I'm always happy to really chat with anyone in the community about anything in collectibles. It's as long as the time is available, I'm always happy to do it.
Absolutely.
Um, I started collecting since as long as I can remember, honestly. Uh, I think I took collecting seriously maybe when I was um I don't know, 18, 19 or something like that. And in my opinion, uh, by saying I took it seriously, I mean that I started actually going for collectibles which I felt can be can have good return in the future, and going for like the mintiest stuff, the sealed stuff, you know. Before that, of course, it all came from the passion of gaming and uh, collecting Pokemon cards as a kid and all that. But it was all about just having the video game or having the cards in a binder. It didn't matter what grade it was. We had no appreciation to what's a PSA 3 or what's a PSA 10. It's all the same
Right.
card, and that's where the passion comes from. So that's I think that stage is absolutely important to build this kind of passion towards the hobby. By probably by the age 18, 19, I started to buying sealed video games, and it was such a taboo topic in the community.
Hmm.
Like a lot of people would get angry for and dismiss the sealed game community, which was incredibly small back in the day. Like you wouldn't believe how small it was. Like I wouldn't be exaggerating if I told you that the whole sealed video game collectors community that had online presence, let's say in 2000, I want to say 2010, for example, maybe did not reach 50 people.
Wow.
I don't think it even, yeah, I don't think it even approached the number 50. Like 50 is a generous assumption, honestly. Uh, but yeah, then this started to grow. I'm not saying saying there were 50 collectors. I'm just saying there were like less than 50 people who are actively in this space online
Publicly,
talking about
correct.
collecting their games. And yeah. So I don't know if you're aware, but it was like there was this whole thing where people would say, video games are meant to be played. They're not meant to be kept in plastic, and
It's a similar thing
all
with
these.
cards. You got to play with cards. You
Yeah,
can't encase it. Yeah, it's the same thing.
yeah,
It's the same
and
thing with my
you just
vintage
have you
toys.
exactly.
Yeah,
You just need to ignore those voices, because in
yeah,
the end you're gonna you're enjoying what you're doing. That's the most important part. And other than enjoying, you probably feel that what you're doing is the uh, right thing for your future and your collection.
right.
So yeah, I started collecting from there, and I built a nice collection with whatever, because back at that time I was still a student from school into the early years of university, with pretty much no proper income, no no proper amount of funds that would get the high end stuff. But I would, whatever money I had, I would just spend on collectibles. Like my close friends would even tease me about it at times. Like if I had, let's say, $500 in the bank, I would rather spend $450 from it buying a sealed game than spend 150 or something to go out with my friends to, whatever they do
Why
to have fun.
why was that the case for you? Why did you value that? Like, what was it? What kind of? Because I find that very interesting, because you had to have a level of foresight at that time, because you're talking about well over a decade ago, to have that kind of foresight. And so it's like, what was it about, having money in whatever collectible that you had felt like it was much safer to have versus essentially having it in your bank account, or putting it in any type of savings, or any other form of safe investment, right? Like, what was it about that particular thing that you would much rather have? Do you feel like you were being reckless? Did you see it as an investment at that time? Like, what were your thoughts, at that time specifically, where it's like, hey, I would much rather have $450 in whatever collectible versus, in your bank account or something else?
Well, it was honestly, it was always super clear to me that sealed video games are gonna be something, are gonna be like crazy collectibles in the future.
Mm,
But I always pictured it happening in like 40 years or something when I'm retiring, and I have this crazy collection of video games which I can just sell and have, crazy funds from, and like buy. Like this is how I used to picture it. Like I would just buy a big house and invest the rest of the money in some sort of passive income play and stuff. I pictured this happening in maybe 2040. Honestly, like this was my the way I thought about it. uh, I would have never imagined it happening in 2020. But this is another topic where it got accelerated by the fact that we had the COVID and the
mm-hmm.
pandemic. I Regarding your question, I did feel reckless at a lot of points because, well, I mean, my family is supportive of my hobbies, right?
Yeah,
But they don't get it.
same.
So even though they are supportive, like, fine, do whatever you want, be happy, but they would give you, that doubt
Yeah,
that, are you sure you're spending like $500 on a game behind acrylic, just put on your shelf, instead of using that money to just, as you said, save it, saving that money in the bank or putting it into something else. And like especially my father would always support whatever I'm doing, because even back in the day, even when I was like 18 or something, I used to buy and sell a lot. Like obviously
okay.
on a much smaller scale, like you can consider it like a sort of a hustle.
Yeah.
And he would support me, like at times, if I find a collectible that I feel I can flip for a nice amount of money, but I don't have uh, the amount needed to buy the collectible. My father would actually just let me borrow money from him, like on top of the money he gives me for, weekly or monthly or whatever. He would let me borrow money from him just to buy the collectible, flip it the next week, and give him his money back. So uh, he always supported this, and my parents, like, in general. So that helped a lot. I have to say that helped a lot, because I know other friends and other people around me where their parents would be like, what the hell are you doing buying video games? And not even, I mean, having the games sealed in acrylic, that's a whole different level of insane. Like,
Yeah.
it's to a lot of other parents, like, that's psychopath level, like, spending
And to even call it
$500.
and to even call it an investment, that makes you look even crazier, because like the most traditional means of
Yeah,
investing is houses, stocks, IRA, etc., etc., etc. And so like
absolutely.
for me it was very similar, like when I first came into this space, was like my first big purchase was in the four figures at that time back in 2019.
Mhm.
It's like, are you serious? Are you really about to drop $1,000 or $2,000 on one piece of card? Like, this is cardboard. And I'm like, yeah. They're like, why? And like I would jokingly say, it's like, because you threw away my cards, when I was a kid. So I'm just getting back. I'm just going back and getting what I want. This is your fault, because if I would have kept all that
Yeah.
stuff, then I wouldn't be spending an atrocious amount of money on stuff. But
Mm.
I think for them, they've always been kind of, there was a sense of doubt, for me as well. Having parents that immigrated here, their traditional means of what's the right way to make an income, or to make a career, is vastly different than the traditional American kind of thing. And so
Mm.
for me, it was like I had to kind of prove it to them. And so like when they started seeing my sales, when they started seeing like what I was doing on social media, across the board, whether it was TikTok or Instagram, or when I started this podcast and they started seeing that, or getting sponsored, they started seeing a little bit more progress as far as that goes. But at the end of the day, they're still they're former immigrants. Like, well, they are immigrants to this country, so they're very tough on that. I've never had to ask my parents where I had to like borrow money. There was one time back in 2020 where I was like, "Hey, you wanna spot me like 10 G's at 11% interest? I'll pay it back in like 4 months." And so like at that time, my parents didn't even give me that. Like my dad didn't even bat an eye at it. But hey, it is what it is. I'm
Yeah.
content with where I'm at. But yeah, it's really cool to kind of see that sort of story, and find that relationship right there. To kind of go back to who you are. Um, how long have you been in Japan? Have you stayed there your entire life? Did you move there? What was that adjustment period like? And you said you went to university there. What did you go to university for? And did you finish school? What was your profession? And do you still practice that profession?
Yeah, so I moved to Japan in 2017 when I had the opportunity to do a PhD course in the University of Tokushima. My PhD is actually in dentistry, and
Wow.
in med med medicine and dentistry for the PhD, and my bachelor is in dentistry. So I was actually a dentist, and I worked in Dubai for a few years. And then I moved to Japan and I did my PhD and I worked as a researcher at the university. And I ended up getting my PhD in 2020. And I've always done, what I'm doing right now, basically as a hobby, just as a side hustle, as a side
Absolutely.
thing, nothing more than that. And I would have probably continued to do this, but after the pandemic, I graduated I graduated in 2020, you know? So like in the middle of the pandemic. And as a dentist, dentists were just losing their jobs left and right because no one wanted to go to the dentist during COVID.
Absolutely.
Uh, it was very difficult. I tried a lot to find a job, and it was like super difficult, and it still is until now. That's in the clinical aspect of dentistry, and I put in a lot of work as well to try to get into the academic aspect, like in the university, to work in research in medicine and dentistry. Uh, and I couldn't get a job, so I was just sitting without a job throughout 2020
Wow.
from 2020, and in 2020 I was still doing my PhD. I graduated towards the end, and then I was basically sitting without a job throughout 2021. uh, at the same time, I was still like, uh, doing what I'm doing now as a hobby, and it was bringing in good income. Um, so I just told myself that, okay, like I don't have a job in dentistry or in research at the moment, so I'm doing well with collectibles, so I might as well just turn it into a professional thing and incorporate it, have a proper company and everything, and just keep going with that. If I end up finding a job again in research in university, then I'll have two streams of income.
Hmm.
I'll be a researcher and I'll be like doing full time, and I'll still do what I'm doing right now through this company. I'll probably just let someone handle the day-to-day stuff in it. So that's how it happened. That's how it started. uh, like, it helps that the main reason actually is that I've financially I've done way better in collectibles and in the pop culture scene in general than I did in my profession, which
Right.
is in dentistry, or like it's not even comparable. Like it's not even remotely comparable. Not only financially, but also the network of connections that I had in the world of artists, and not only artists, like people who work in video games, for example.
Yeah.
uh,
That network alone is
since
immensely valuable. You could literally leverage it in any sort of way possible. Like you just said it yourself. You kind of created this kind of business around it. Um, that's generating you a level of income that is satisfactory for yourself. Um, but that's super interesting because there's a lot of people in Pokemon um, that kind of want to do that want to make an income off of this, right? Um, and before we get into what I'm leading up to, I'm gonna go ahead and push it back to you so you can kind of finish what you said because I did cut you off.
no, it's I actually I just wanted to conclude that um, the reason I have this network of artists and professionals around me is also because connecting with these people was pretty much a hobby for me from 2018. So between 2018 and 2020, um, I have a friend in Dubai, because I don't know if I mentioned, but I lived most of my life before coming to Japan. I was in Dubai,
Mm,
and I have a friend who was the uh, organizer of a lot of the big pop culture events that happened in Dubai, including the biggest ones like Dubai Comic Con, which is the Middle East Film and Comic Con. And like he's one of the nicest people I know. He's quite older than me, so like I honestly consider him like an older like brother, like a
yeah,
mentor
like a
in
mentor,
this
brother. Yeah.
space. Yeah, and he would always like support me for really no reason. He had no reason to support me in that, but I just reached out to him and I said, "Look, I'm here in Japan. I'm doing my PhD, and I just thought like, why don't I try to connect with the artists in Japan and see if I can get them to events in Dubai?" So I told him like, in order to do that, I'm gonna have to be like an official part of your company, or at least an official representative who's recognized by you, so I can say that I'm a representative of this company, and I would like to help you go to Dubai Comic Con, for example, and then I'll be able to have meetings with artists and important people in the industry. And he agreed pretty much right away. Like, and I thank him for that until today. Uh, and that's how I started meeting with artists purely as a hobby. I didn't even want to get any sort of payment out of it other than just getting to know them, getting a few signed items, snapping a couple of pictures. It was just fun for me. I was, a student here, and I would do that whenever I had the time, like to go to Tokyo, Osaka, and all the important cities in Japan. So yeah, uh, it all ended up like working out in a way where all these factors,
Came
being a
together.
collector, yeah, collecting, being with the knowing all these artists, having this network, ended up, you know, causing me to open this company a few months ago.
That's actually really cool to hear because like your situation with your friend out in Dubai is very similar to my kind of situation, in the sense of I work in conjunction with Collecticon, and I often have to reach out to other content creators or other influential people within this space, whether it's through TikTok, whether it's through the Pokemon community, like people like Rhymestyle or Rev, or people like Cassius Marsh. Like these are all people that I've had to reach out to on behalf as a representative of Collecticon. So like that same sort of thing where you like being able to just being in the presence and connecting with a lot of these people. That's sort of the same thing that I've done within the past like 2-3 years. It's crazy the similarities that are here, that's here, which I think is just super cool. Because like with all these special guests, whether it's voice actors or people like the Power Rangers, it's just cool just to sit down and talk to them, because I just feel like I find a lot of value from the things that they say, because I feel like I'm going to get something out of it in terms of the things that they say. I'm not asking for anything monetary. I'm not asking for anything else. It's just a cool thing. It's part of this cool kind of process where like I am a collector. I've done the whole sales stuff, and now I'm being presented opportunities through Collecticon, and so like it's really cool to see those similarities. I guess like my next question to you is what, when you were out in Dubai and you were applying for universities and you ended up going to Japan, what was it about Japan that drew you there? Was it just the culture? Was it the food? Was it the different anime that you enjoy? Because like I know you're a collector of video games and you're a collector of different anime stuff like that. So like what was it specifically about Japan that drew you to going there over every other place that you probably applied to?
Well, you know how you're, as you said, you come from a family of immigrants, and I think we have a sort of similar background in there because we're not really from Dubai, for example.
Okay.
We actually come from Syria, and most of my family actually ended up moving to Canada as well.
Okay.
So I just want to say that we have the same sort of uh, mentality when it comes, to appreciating money, appreciating the funds we have, appreciating whatever we have.
Yeah, absolutely.
So part of that appreciation was my family put me through college, and they paid a lot of money to for me to get my bachelor degree as a dentist. So, but nowadays, having a bachelor degree is not really enough. You need to do something else. You need to get a master's degree. You need to get a PhD. You need to do something beyond that in order to get proper recognition and be able to end up in the right places. However, I've always felt like, my family put a lot of effort and money into getting me a bachelor's degree. I have siblings. I can't depend on them. I can't depend on my parents to even put me through a master's degree or something beyond that. You know what I mean?
Mm.
In Dubai, it's super expensive, like incredibly expensive to go for a master's degree in dentistry. And there's I mean, there might be some scholarships, but they're really difficult to get into, like to the point where it could be pretty much impossible. And in places like Canada, the US, all the important first world countries where you can get the proper education and have the proper recognition through a certificate, it costs like a ton of money. One of the nice things about Japan is that it can pretty much cost you nothing to do a PhD here. Uh, Not only that, the government here would support any student coming from anywhere from around the world to get a PhD in Japan or a master's degree or whatever it is. So you can apply for scholarships. You can get, you get a lot of nice treatment from the government regarding what you need to pay and what you don't need to pay, regarding how they help you. So you can come to Japan, live here for 4 years, get a profession, get a PhD or a master's degree by the end of it, and throughout this whole period, spend very little money out of your own pocket compared to what you would spend anywhere else in the world. Plus the part that it's Japan, as you said, we grew up with the culture, with the video games, with the Pokemon and anime and manga and all these kind of things.
Hmm.
So it was just, it was simply too good to not go ahead with.
Was the
Uh,
transition there fairly easy? Are you like fluent in
oh,
Japanese now?
it's absolute. I'm not fluent in Japanese. I speak Japanese for the, a day-to-day thing, like, when I'm dealing with someone at the convenience store, or uh, getting to know someone for the first time. But I can't hold like a conversation for,
Absolutely.
say,
Right.
20 or 30 minutes or something. Transition was not easy at all. Like, it was so difficult to the extent where I almost gave up. I almost gave up, and I just wanted to pack up and leave, because the culture is so different, as you may imagine, and you need to integrate yourself into it, or you will always be pretty much the outsider uh, here,
Mm.
and you don't want that, long term. Like, it's okay if you're a tourist, for example. You'd enjoy your time, you'd be happy to be the outsider, because uh, there they can be quite welcoming here to international people whom they deal with for the first time. But when you're a student in a university, in a college, in a classroom where all your friends or all your colleagues are Japanese people speaking in Japanese, and you don't want to be the outsider. And I had to be the outsider for a long while there. So it
Mm.
was it was not easy at all. And um, one thing about Japan and the education system here is that it's heavily um, you need to put in a lot of efforts. No one's gonna be on top of you and tell you, why did you do this, or why did you not do that, or you have a deadline. You can spend a whole year doing nothing, and no one will you know talk to you about it.
Mm.
So uh, you could potentially be in a very tough situation if you don't manage your time yourself, and you don't manage your work yourself, and you end up like 6 months later or something, and find yourself like way behind compared to your colleagues. We're
Right.
not used to that, like in our previous, at least for me, in my previous uh, university, in the previous levels of education. There was definitely a big degree of spoon feeding. Yeah, there's absolutely no spoon feeding in Japan. Like, you need to do everything. You need to take initiative uh, with everything you're doing. And like, one
Right.
of them is, for example, you asked about the language, and one of the reasons I still don't speak Japanese fluently, even though I've been here for a few years, is because I did not take the proper initiative to learning Japanese. No
Right.
one's gonna force me to learn, not even the
Right.
university. So that was very difficult. That was very difficult, and I almost canceled and went back to Dubai. But thankfully, I kept trying and pulled through with it.
Right, right. That's pretty interesting to kind of hear your background on all things. To kind of switch gears, obviously the podcast theme today is finding success in Pokemon. So like, I because of where it's a Pokemon podcast, that's why it's Pokemon. But the title should be finding success in collectibles as a whole. So essentially, I want to kind of ask, at where at what point did you find yourself, or what was that moment where you started finding yourself as this uh, uh resource, or yeah, well, resource as a wealth of knowledge for people to kind of go to when it comes to video games, or when it comes to very very low populated Japanese cards, specifically trophy cards and etc. Like, how did you, and as well as signatures, how did you find yourself in that position, um across the field, like across this entire landscape of Pokemon? A lot of big people know who you are, but the vast majority of the Pokemon community as a whole don't know who you are. So how did you find yourself in that position where you did a lot of these record deals, and you did a lot of these different types of authentication, whether it's signatures or you just help people out when it comes to authenticating video games? Like, how did you find yourself in that position?
Well, first of all, regarding video games, as I said, I've been collecting since maybe 2010, but I've been also collecting before 2010. Stuff that were not graded,
Mm,
sealed but ungraded. And throughout this time period, I didn't realize it, but I was just building this sort of uh, a knowledge, I would say, maybe regarding what seal is right and what to look out for. It was not something like I wasn't studying it. It just happened
yeah.
throughout time. I would say I realized around 2019 or 2020, when when I found out that I was in a few discussions, like on our Facebook group. I see people like asking about stuff that were way too obvious for me, at least. Like
Mm,
this shouldn't even be a question. So why are people questioning this? Like this is obviously a fake seal, for example, or this is obviously an authentic seal. And at that point, I realized that a small part of the community who has been collecting since 2010, not just me, a lot of other people, uh, uh, have a sort of knowledge to be in a position where they have the upper hand in becoming a sort of authority on identifying what is okay and what is not okay in
right.
sealed games. And before that point, I had no idea, like I had the proper amount of knowledge to give an opinion
Yeah, there
in
was no
video games,
reference.
even, honestly.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't think that I had that. So that's as far as video games. As far as cards, I don't consider myself an expert in any way in cards in TCG, right? If you tell me I'm an expert in video games, I would accept that, and I think I have the knowledge to back it up. But I would not claim at all that I'm an expert
Hmm.
in TCG. I love collecting TCG. I have a decent amount of knowledge in TCG, in the high end trophy cards and stuff, but I'm not an expert.
Mm,
Uh, the way it happened is also because because I'm in Japan, and because I had access to uh, most of the high end cards. I've had basically friends reach out and say, "Hey, can you help us get this certain card from this shop? Can you help us uh, do this trade, for example, where I would just hold the card and wait for the money to come in, or hold the card and the money."
right.
And it just kind of went on from there. Uh, yeah, I would say, just if you just um, treat all the people around you with enough care, uh, enjoy what you're doing, after a while you would build this sort of reputation where people would start trusting you.
Absolutely.
And it
I
just
can relate to that.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, it just kind of happened, uh, basically. I had no intention of making it happen, but I think the turning point was in 2020, December of 2020, when I helped Marco do the Illustrator deal.
Yeah, the $920,000 in value in trade deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that was the point where other people started reaching out to me to do some sort of other deals where
Mhm.
I'm sort of middlemaning them, and I think it started from there, and then it became I took it to a more professional spot just a few months ago with the company, and I started getting the as you've seen on Instagram, like the high end trophy cards for
Yeah,
some
like the Snap
collectors
Magikarp.
worldwide.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. The trophy Pikachu's, for example. Um, when that happened because again I felt like there's a gap in the market. Uh, I'm available in Japan. There aren't many people that are doing what I'm doing
And you took
in
advantage
Japan.
of that.
So
Absolutely. You
yeah,
saw an
yeah,
opportunity and you
yeah.
took advantage of that. I guess my next question to you is, uh, how are you able to, like, what is your process in terms of being able to source out trophy cards? Because obviously I know a lot of people. Well, I don't know them personally, but like I know for a fact that there's a lot of people out there that do have ungraded trophy cards, and and for the most part, the vast majority of people are Japanese people who did participate in a lot of those competitions from back in the day, and they didn't grade any of that kind of stuff, and so it kind of never just left their hands. What is your process in terms of being able to source that out? And let's say it is like a Snap Magic card. What's your process in terms of authenticating something along the lines of that, something that's never been seen before?
Well, again, like the most important thing is networking.
Yeah,
If you have the right network of people, you'll always get the proper information. And to have the right network, basically, you just need uh, to be nice to people. That's all.
yeah,
Don't you don't need to have any sort of agenda, and just be nice to people, and uh, uh, you know help them out whenever you can. uh, and eventually you'll have a nice network of connections where people will also try to help you because you've helped them, and because they want further help from you in the future. You know, this is kind of what happened here, even in Japan. I know quite a lot of Japanese collectors, and they do get interested as well in stuff that I'm able to get, like signed items, signed cards. Uh, so they try to help each other out as well when one of them wants to sell a card and they know that these cards sell for a much higher value internationally than they would
absolutely.
sell in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So if they know that I have a buyer, they would try to push their friend to contact me or let me know where to find the card. And this is one of the ways. Another way is obviously just hunting uh, the websites and the stores, the physical stores in Japan where there could be such gems still remaining.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Regarding authentication, like for example, the Snap Magikarp, like I had to go and check it out by myself.
Absolutely.
That was the only way to know. Yeah. Um, so luckily, it was being sold by one of the bigger chains in Japan. So they understood, like they did their due diligence to make sure that it's real at first, and they allowed me to do my due diligence as
And
well.
what was that?
Uh,
Because there, like stuff like that, you have nothing to really compare to. There's no reference point, right? So like, were you comparing
yeah.
it to previous trophy cards or previous Snap contest cards? Is that what the process was?
Well, I was pretty much comparing it basically to when I had it in hand, uh, to old back cards in general,
Okay.
because you can really not. It's not easy to get the fakes right. When you have fake Japanese old back cards, they're always like the texture is a little bit different. The card can be kind of like floppy, you know. It's not it wouldn't be like what the card is supposed to be.
Hmm.
Uh, when when you zoom in, if you use like a loop, uh, uh, I'm sure you know there are like those lines that are only available on real cards, on original cards.
Hmm.
So once we knew that, the other thing would be providing provenance and knowing that where did this card come from. Uh, Unfortunately for the Magikarp, we couldn't do that uh,
Mm.
to the most satisfying extent because they had a policy of uh, they couldn't let me know who the person who the person who submitted the card, who that person is.
Wow.
They can't by law. Yeah. So, but uh, one of the nice things about Japan is that a lot of the work depends on trust bases, and basically the boss of the shop, the person, like, not the manager of the chain, like the person uh, who is in a much higher position, he personally assured me that you don't need to worry at all about where this card came from. We cannot tell you who the person is,
Hmm.
but I can tell you with confidence that it's good to go. Like, he's the real deal. So I assume it probably came directly from the winner of the card,
I gotcha.
or through a friend of the winner. That's my assumption.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Side
So that.
question. Uh,
Mhm.
we just saw the sale of the Snap Pikachu get completed. Do you have any idea who? You don't have to say if you don't have to say the person's name, but do you know who actually won the Snap Pikachu?
I wish I knew. I actually don't.
Ah,
It
dang, that's
it
crazy.
wasn't me.
Oh man, it'll be cool once we see it like pop up within a few days. If it does pop up on social media, it'd be really
Yeah,
cool just to see
if
it
it does.
happen because there's a few people out there that I follow. I won't mention their names because they probably want their privacy, but there's a few people out there that are trying to complete the entire Snap contest set, and I I'm very envious for anyone who owns one because for me one of my biggest goals, I'd say, I don't know if it's gonna take 5 years, I don't know if it's gonna take 10 years. It's my long term goal to acquire a Pokemon Snap contest card to match with my Pokemon Snap machine from Blockbuster, because that's a grail right here, and so like I would like to have that card just to match it. Um, but yeah, do you think that that card undersold? Do you think that that card should have sold for way more?
I think the way, well, first of all, we don't even know if it was real so far.
That's
Like, the
true.
whole auction, not the card itself.
Right,
It
right,
might
right,
have
right,
been, there's nothing that suggests that it's real, but at the same time, there's nothing that suggests it's not real. So we can't
right.
really
It's
know until
hearsay
someone has it.
currently.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Until someone has it in hand, then regarding the value, uh, and again, I'm not an expert in TCG, but just thinking about it, it's Pikachu, and it could be the only Snap card that ever surfaced. So it definitely seems undervalued to go
Hmm.
for that amount. But the person who's selling it, if it's legit, then he went about it in a very in the worst way possible. Through a zero feedback account on Yahoo Auctions,
Hmm.
using a similar picture to the pictures that popped off, uh, last year and the year before. Like, if I was in this guy's place, I would put much more effort into presenting the card and showing that I actually own the card, and I would try to go through, for example, a middleman service in Japan, that has thousands and thousands of feedback, even if they're gonna cut like 5% or whatever from the sale, then there's no telling what the card would have gone for. It could have received like double its starting price.
Mm.
It was 34 billion yen, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Could have easily went for way more than that. Instead, you had probably one person who really wanted to trust the process and really wanted to maybe he has the right resources to make sure the card is legit before making the payment, and that's why that resulted in one single bid.
That
Uh,
makes sense.
one of the things that uh, one of the things that tells me that the card might be real is that the guy in the description of the auction said that he wants to meet in person to complete the deal. So that's a
Mm.
good sign, because if it was a fake card, they would just try to get the money out of you as soon as possible. They try to ask you to send the money right away and so on. But this guy was like, I want to meet in person, and you can take the card in person and pay me in person. So that suggests that it could be the real deal. So I guess we'll
Hmm.
see in a few days, weeks. I don't know.
Or ever. Yeah. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. They should have went through people like yourself. Is your business primarily through the word of mouth in Japan, or are you actually like marketing? Because I know as content creators here in the States, the biggest thing is being able to market yourself as a business now. Um, I've known this since I came into the Pokemon community that you can't simply just make content alone. And I mean, you could, but it's gonna be far difficult than let's say someone like Leonhardt or Super Duper Danny or Jordan Fringe. Jordan Fringe, Real Breaking Nate, so on and so Unlisted Leaf. Like they just had to produce content to get to where they currently are. They didn't really have to produce sales. They didn't have to do much at all. They didn't have to do any marketing. The only marketing that they had to do really was just at that time just produce at scale on YouTube. So a lot of people like myself, I have to constantly market myself. There's no day where I'm not doing that when it comes to whether my content itself that I'm marketing for, or the sales, or any sort of business that I'm doing, or a future business that I'm trying to do that I have to, because the best type of marketing is typically for things or for products that doesn't necessarily exist yet. So, do you find yourself
Do you
doing?
do that?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just saying. Do you do what you're doing full time?
No. I run a business for 50 to 55 hours a week, brick and mortar. I do that full time, on top of what I do as far as content goes, which takes about, I don't know, maybe 100 to 110 hours of my week. But
Oh,
with
that's
my
amazing.
business, it allows that. So like I have that kind of convenience aspect to where me sitting at my
Nice.
own business, I don't have to constantly be on my feet at all times, because it's mostly
Mhm.
wholesale. So that's the bread and butter of it. Um, I guess for my question to you, are you constantly trying to market yourself in Japan so that way you're the first person anyone sees or knows who to go to? Is that what you're doing? Or are you just
I'm
all
not
purely
doing
based on word of mouth?
yeah, I'm not doing any sort of professional marketing, if
Okay.
that's what you're asking. I'm
Yeah.
not doing that at the moment.
Okay.
It would be a good idea for the future to have the company itself, marketed professionally. So far, again, like what I would stress is networking, not only with collectors, but even with the people in owners of stores, people who are managers in stores. Like I have connections with these guys who would, for example, ping me whenever they get a crazy card in, like
Mhm.
even before the card goes on display, you know. So they would tell me we have this card available. It's going to be on display, for example, in a couple of days, or you can just uh, buy it right now if you want to pay like a certain amount of money. And if I have a customer who wants to buy it, then that's one way to go about it. So it's all about again, like networking,
Right.
being
Well, of
nice to
course.
people.
Being passionate too is
That's
a
it,
big thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, so for those
yeah,
guys who are in here, the biggest advice is networking, being passionate and just, loving what you kind of do. I think that's kind of a given right there. We're getting close to the hour mark, and we're gonna start wrapping it up here soon. Before we start wrapping up stuff, I kind of just want to ask one more question. Um,
Sure.
with the recent news of some of the most conservative and most bearish banks here and around the world, like Deutsche Banks, there's banks that are talking about an impending recession. What do you think could potentially happen in the card space as a whole? Do you think that will impact I mean, obviously it probably will impact the hobby, but in your opinion, and this is not investment advice, this is just his opinion, and in just your opinion alone, how bad do you think it'll affect the collectible space?
I mean, I honestly don't think I'm qualified to answer this
That's
in
fair.
any way. But the only thing I would say is that, you know, if you just zoom out the at the graph of the market of TCG from the year 2000 until today, it's only been going up. There might have been
That's
some
fair.
downs, but like in the grand scale, it's always been, going this
Trending
way.
upwards
And I
because
don't think this is
there's
gonna
there's
stop, like,
scarcity
really.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
I
So
mean,
I think
that holds water to me.
it'll continue to go up. Honestly, like, you might have missed all-time highs for a few items, but there will be a new all-time high in a couple of years, for example.
Yeah. Um, I think that's a really good way to kind of conclude this podcast. Um, Nito, if you could plug yourself in, tell anyone whatever projects you're currently working on, where to find you, if you have a website, anything of the sort, and I'll go ahead and close us out after that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Hey,
I
I
really
appreciate you
enjoyed
for being
this.
here. Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to have you on in the future
Anyway,
for any record sale, because I
definitely.
I know I know when you did that trade back then with Marco, we covered that here on the podcast way back then. I'm like, is it the right time to ask Nito to be on the podcast? I was like, no, let me go ahead and build that relationship first, and maybe in the future we'll just have him on the podcast at some point. So yeah, go ahead and tell our audience here where they can find you, and we'll go ahead and close this out.
Uh, Pretty much, the best place to find me is Instagram. You can message me directly on my Instagram, Hadoukenido. Uh, you can also reach me on email, which is also on my Instagram. I'm always happy to chat, always happy to make deals, make the acquaintance of new people, new friends. So yeah, feel free to reach out.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, Before we close out, guys, I want to go ahead and quickly talk about our sponsors to the podcast. We have TCG Stadium. TCG Stadium is a online card shop based in Nashville. They house modern Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon products, so make sure you go check them out at tcgstadium.com. We also have the Pokemon Network. The Pokemon Network is operated by Ken Lee. He is a big time seller, but you could pretty much go to him if you have any small time card or the most expensive card. You could probably go to him and probably scoop it off of him. That guy is going bonkers as far as his sales go. And then you have Double Infinity Gaming, which is an online card shop based in Florida. Julie and Will are your go-to people to go to. If you have any particular questions about any TCGs, if you have any questions about gameplay, about Magic the Gathering, you name it, they have it. And our unofficial sponsor, we're not paid by them, is Collector. I want to make that very clear. We do not get paid by this application company at all. We just have them here on our podcast because we believe in serving you guys as much value as possible, and that is Collector. Collector is an app where you can pretty much put in almost every TCG that is available, Funkos, basketball cards, into the application itself, and it tracks the growth of your quote-unquote portfolio. It tracks the value of your collection. The days of putting your cards into Excel sheets are getting very close to being gone, because Collector is the app that does track it. It tracks MetaZoo, it tracks Dragon Ball, it tracks Digimon, it tracks Pokemon. They just added in the BGS feature to it as of Saturday, I want to say. So definitely go check that out. It's a free app, and let me know what your thoughts are, because I know a lot of people are loving it so far. But if you have any, negative criticisms or things that they can definitely work on, let us know. I'm more than happy to relay that information. Collector will also be present in Collecticon in Dallas, Texas at the end of May. They will be at my table specifically. You'll just see it'll be called the collector's table. So definitely go over there. They'll be giving away free stuff. But on that note, Nito, there is one way where we always close out the podcast. It looks goofy, it looks cringy, but it's just this.
Before we close out the podcast, I just wanted to say something. Maybe consider this like a post-credit kind of thing. I just realized that I don't think it's known who the other person in the trade was in the big Illustrator deal. Is it known?
Marco?
Does the community know? Marco, and who's the other person? Because I middleman it's not my illustrator.
Oh, Logan, right?
No,
I don't think you mentioned it.
No, so I'm talking about the deal in 2020, where Marco gave away like a bunch of Charizards for 900,000.
Oh no, yeah, I don't know. All was known was that you were. All was known was that you facilitated that. Was it Dubsy?
Yeah.
Dang.
So that wasn't known before this point. Yeah. So
I would love
check out his page as well.
Yeah, I've been following him. I want to be able to establish that kind of connection in the future to where it's like, hey, if there's ever like an actual person, if I ever get one of those like voice changer things, if he doesn't want to show his identity, that'd be the coolest way to get him on the podcast. That'd be really sick. But it's really cool that you have people that are absolutely passionate to throw out that kind of money for all these different kind of cards, and it just seems as if this has been like a project of theirs for a very, very long time, and they're just now going crazy on it because they see an opportunity, and I think that's absolutely cool.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Dubsy is one of my close friends, whom I got to know through this hobby just quite recently, actually, just like a couple of years ago, not beyond that. But he is like I've never seen any collector with better foresight, honestly. Like this, man, this guy would, if he points towards an item and tells you this is going to be good for the future, you should go ahead and buy it, even if you don't see it. He was buying first edition Charizards when they were $20,000, PSA 10s.
That's crazy.
Multiples.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming then he has a relationship with Gary then too.
I'm not sure actually. I actually don't know. But yeah, he's been collecting for a long time through just simply buying through eBay and stuff. But he would buy stuff that other people would think are crazy at really high price points.
I was actually going to ask, this just popped into my head as of right now. So, I'm assuming that for the vast majority, there's a lot of wealthy people in Dubai. I've been noticing that more and more people are starting to buy out collectibles from that particular area. Do you see that trend? Do you see that trend kind of happening more and more often?
In the Middle East, probably in general, not specifically Dubai. Yeah. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of people who like to collect. However, I don't think they reach the point where they justify or understand spending, for example, $100,000.
Yeah, correct.
On a
Do you see that happening?
Even though they have the money, they don't. The $100,000 wouldn't be anything compared to what they spend on other
things. Do you see people in that particular region buying out, like, let's say, because obviously sports cards does make Pokemon cards look like chump change in terms of liquidity in that overall market. Are there people out there that are buying high-end sports cards from that particular region, or is that something that just does not mean anything to them?
As far as I know, there aren't.
Okay.
But I do see the potential. So
right. Okay.
It might happen.
That's pretty interesting because I've had my buddy Alex Hodges here on the podcast, and we've always talked about what would it take to bring in that kind of crazy amount of money into this space. and it's always that one person that will probably come in. We don't know when. That's gonna throw in stupid amounts of money at card, and it probably already has happened. We just don't know about it yet through these private deals. Because I've learned from Pokemon Radar that a lot of the deals that he's participated in, people just don't find out till a year later. So or way after the fact. So and I can say that about the vintage Digimon community as well, because like a lot of deals happen privately that hasn't necessarily been like showcased. So I'd say to people, like, just keep an eye open and keep a fair shot at things and give things a fair shot. But yeah, I just kind of always wanted to know that was something that I just kind of wanted to ask real fast, because that was on the top of my head.
There are always signs that something big happened. You will always see signs if you're following closely.
Yeah.
For example, the PSA 10 Illustrator deal happened actually, like, I don't know, almost a year ago.
Yeah.
Not a year ago.
Yeah.
Maybe, like more than 6 months ago at least. So if you follow the market, someone would be like, a few people would know about the deal, and a few of them might be able to buy, for example, a PSA 9 Illustrator. So at that point, you might find that a PSA 9 Illustrator went and got sold, or a raw Illustrator got sold through one of the websites. And these kind of things, where there would be like a new all-time high or something, is probably a sign that something else happened behind the scenes. And if you follow closely, you will definitely see those signs happening.
Yeah, that all that stuff kind of just blows my mind, because it's the amount of like level of foresight, but on top of that, like, some people have that kind of insider information where it's like, oh yeah, this guy's about to make a big play, it's time to buy cards now, and then once that news is released, I'm gonna go ahead and sell some stuff. So it's definitely interesting when that stuff kind of happens, because it's like, I know when I covered that on the podcast, well, on this channel, that video hit 15,000 views, which was like very big for this channel. But like I was, absolutely floored, because it's like this stuff, like when Pokemon Radar, when John told me about it, like, yeah, I've been wanting to tell people about this for the past year now, but now I finally can talk about it, and I'm like, this is kind of crazy. But yeah, again, I don't want to take too much of your time. I greatly appreciate, you being here on the podcast, and, giving some sort of insight as to what you do and what you've gone through. And we'll definitely like to have you more here on the podcast. And I think our audience here can greatly appreciate you for what you do. But on that note, the way I close out the podcast, the way I close out the podcast is kind of cringy, but it's not cringy at the same time. It's kind of like peace out, stuff like that. But the way we do it is that you get your imaginary teacup, you hold it up like this, you sip up, you say deuces, and you salute out. So you're gonna.
All right.
We have our audience. I hope I never see our audience ever do this, because it's like we always have a podcast like this, and the very few times where we've had the live podcast is out at conventions, but that audience is also very, very small too. But yeah, let's go ahead and do it. I don't know if people over here do it with me. I'd like to know if you guys are out there doing the same thing with me. Otherwise, I look really goofy in the process. But let's go ahead and do it. All right, sips up, deuces. And
salute.
We're out. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys for joining the podcast, and we'll see you